education is as basic a human right as it can get. And to pursue advocacy for education for all, and not just education for the sake of learning, but also for personal development, fulfillment of life. In America, the US Constitution doesn't mention the word education at all. In the entire Constitution, you won't find the word education. People not talking clearly. And when clear communication happens, everything's resolved. So that's how that happens with PRs. And if you feel like there was discrimination, then it's Office of Civil Rights. Each state has an Office of Civil Rights. You can file a complaint there. We may say, here's the Bhagavad Gita, translated Bhagavad Gita. That's evidence, and that won't be considered evidence by Pearson or McDougall. Publishers won't do that. A lot of these articles, books even, they're not written in American English. They're written well, but the style of writing is British/Indian kind of English. Good English, no question about it, but it's just not the American. As parents, we all fear for the success of our kids in school. Teachers also, they're professionals, and they should have the sense to recognize when something they're reading is inflammatory or derogatory or in some cases plainly wrong. We have to be engaged, and we have to make relationships with people. That is the best and I say enduring way of achieving results. If state, at least in Massachusetts, if we look at the practice, when the US Department of Agriculture took away money for lunch, state came up with the money. Identifying a problem is one thing, but then proposing a solution, I think that will help go a long way.
Thank you for coming here on a Sunday afternoon. As we people stream in, we will make space for them, and we can also feel comfortable to go and have your tea and things like that. So first and foremost, we will start with Rajeshwari ji. She will be talking about introducing us to the organization that is CoHNA and HPN and CYAN, and that would be the first thing to go. So here is Rajeshwari ji with the introduction to the organizations.
Namaste everyone, and thank you for coming today. I'm going to start with, just take a few minutes before I hand off to our main chief guest of the day today. Take a few moments to introduce CoHNA and also to give everybody a context of why we are here, what we are talking about, what do we mean when we say issues and so forth. So I would like to, like we begin every program, let us start with prayer to the Vignaharta Ganpati and Saraswati. I'm going to display the sutra on the screen. Feel free to please say it with me. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Namaste Sharade Devi Kashmira Puravasini Tvamaham Prarthaye Nityam Vidyadanam Chadehine. A quick word about CoHNA. CoHNA stands for Coalition of Hindus of North America, and it's a grassroots level organization that is created for advocating for a better understanding of the Hindu heritage and tradition. It is trying to build a movement to empower Hindus through education, through outreach, and through strategic action. And it is about protecting the collective interest of the Hindu community. CoHNA ensures to work to make sure that the Hindu identity is respected and celebrated. In the 5 years of its existence so far, CoHNA has sent over 1 million advocacy emails. Over 300 events have been organized across the US and Canada, and over 200 guest speakers have been hosted at these events. You can find more information at cohna.org, and this is our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter handle, CoHNA Official. CoHNA has 2 initiatives that it runs. One is called the Hindu Parent Network, or HPN, and the second is SAN, which is for youth. I will quickly talk about both of those as well. The Hindu Parent Network was created to support the Hindu parents diaspora in the US and in Canada. It is trying to encourage conscious parenting. In fact, we have workshops for that, and improve the representation of Hindu Dharma in the school curricula. It is trying to promote a true understanding of Hindu Dharma among our next generation and ensure that the next generation of Hindus are raised with resilience and dharmic values. So far, over 1,300 parents and 900 kids have been reached through various camps and workshops that we regularly hold. And we have engaged with over 21 school districts across North America to correct misrepresentations in the curricula. We'll be talking about what those are. It has created classroom-ready materials on Hindu Dharma, on our festivals, and also on historical aspects such as the British colonization that are being actively used in schools today. You can find more information at hinduparentsnetwork.org, as well as a lot of resources, including teaching material and lesson plans that have been developed that you can share with your teachers as well. These are the social media handles that you can follow. I would request you to please do that. And then the second initiative is called SIAN. SIAN stands for CoHNA Youth Action Network. This is a very new initiative that was started just a few months ago. And it was created to empower young Hindus to combat bias. We are seeing an increase of bias on campuses and even beyond when they start their jobs, etc. SIAN enables Hindu youth to advocate for their human rights. And so far, in a few months that it has existed, 3 campus chapters already have been initiated, and over 100 students are involved in those chapters. More information can be found at sian.cohna.org, and the Instagram handle is CoHNA Youth. And at the end, I would request you, if you would like more such free events that are not just about school curricula, but about culture, about tradition. There are many other types of events that we do hold. Everything requires money, as you know. Dharmasya moolam artha, as they say in Sanskrit, which is dharma does not work without a basis of having donations. So whatever you can donate, we would be very glad to get that. To create more such events. And now I will try to quickly go over why we are here, setting the context, and then I'll hand it over to Yogesh to introduce Darshan ji and take the program forward. So what are we dealing with here? There are several issues that we are talking about, we've seen over the past few years. One of the main theme that has always been underlying in everywhere is caste. The problem is that this is a social distortion. The caste, it's not that we are denying this is there. But what is the problem is that it's being taught as an intrinsic part of Hindu Dharma. And that is completely false, because there is no text of authority that will ever sanction any discrimination. As anyone who has read the Bhagavad Gita will know, but now you have Bhagavad Gita, Caste and Society as one of the titles in the Massachusetts state textbook, which implies and leaves an impression that it is a casteist kind of a text. And we know that Bhagavad Gita talks about varna, that is based on guna and karma, that has nothing to do with physical attributes or physical identity. Again, another example from the textbook, which is the sentence, the Vedas taught that society should be organized into a rigid system to create cooperation, order and harmony. This is false. The Vedas have never advocated for any such rigid system. In this case, the caste system is implied. And we know that the word caste itself is neither Hindu nor Indian. It is an English word with Portuguese roots. If there is no direct translation to any Indian languages for caste, the closest that comes is jati and varna. And both of those historically have been flexible. They have not been a hard-coded, rigid, hierarchical, hereditary system as is being projected here. And this is the infamous pyramid. I'm sorry, it's getting cut off at the top, but basically you know who's at the top, right? The Brahman and then the Kshatriya, and there is this hierarchy that is being implied here. And in the last few years, a new layer has been added, which is the Dalits. And then the question and answers that are there, the answer key, which is the red, and these are the questions in the textbook that talk about, that again, drum in this thing about caste. So quickly, what is the truth is that the Varna system was a division of power. There was no one Varna that was like control of the whole society. And if you see, the Brahman is actually someone who does not have any of those power, neither political, business nor land, but they had a moral power, a moral authority. And moral power is not something that you inherit from your parents. It is something you earn through your study, through your austerity, through tapasya, as we call it, right? That is how you get moral. You don't have something, you don't write it in your will for your kids. And they were always held to higher standards. So we have instances such as Arthashastra, where Chanakya talks about punishments for a certain crime. And punishment for a Brahman is much higher than punishment for the other Varna. Why? Because they were the role models of society and they were held to very high standards. Coming to the curriculum, we have, I'm sorry, the title is getting a little chopped up, but basically subtle and not so subtle impressions that these things are creating. Now we had this Indian curriculum where they were talking about Ganesha, and this is the picture that they chose to use. Now, Ganesh is a very popular deity. Anybody who Googles Ganesh will find hundreds of thousands of beautiful images, and now AI is throwing in more in the mix. And yet this is the image that they chose to use. It gets worse where then they talk about how Ganesha is remembered for being greedy and how Shiva has his gang of demons. You can take away a child, a 7th grader is going to get from this. Then there is the introduction to Hinduism, where they talk about, where they're using a quote from Al-Baruni. Al-Baruni is in the court of Muhammad of Ghazni, and I'm sure you know Muhammad of Ghazni was one of the brutal invaders, the Islamic invasions that happened over 1,000 years. One of them was Muhammad Ghazni, who basically killed entire villages and destroyed temples and all of that, and took men, women, and children as slaves, thousands and hundreds of thousands of them. And so now we are seeing their words where they talk about how Hindus are haughty and foolishly vain and self-conceited. Well, an analogy I'll give is if you have an intro to Judaism class and then you get a quote from a Nazi right-hand person of Hitler, what are you expecting, right? It's not going to be flattering. It gets worse where they start comparing with other religions. And when you read this, the only thing that comes out of this comparison is that to show that Hindu Dharma is somehow regressive, low level compared to the others, which are more peaceful. And also the low caste Hindus, so-called, they hoped conversion would improve their social status, or most converts come to Islam voluntarily. Now anybody who has read, even glanced at the history of India in the past 1,000 years knows how ridiculously false these statements are. But it is there. We had the high school teach this Padlet recently about Kashmir. Now this Padlet was full of opinion pieces. There was not a single historical reference, citation, anything. There was zero mention of the Kashmiri Hindu exodus, the 7th instance that happened, not the first. But there was no mention of that. They were talking about human rights, but the Kashmiri Hindu human rights nobody cares about. And the wording and the videos and whatever it was extremely disturbing, not to say not just misleading. Swastika is another common misconception that we are constantly seeing. There's a constant conflation of swastik with Hakenkreuz, which is the Nazi symbol. And we see schools, and even although thankfully now they have not repeated this, but they were whenever they see a Hakenkreuz, a Nazi symbol painted anywhere, they will report it or send the school communication as, oh, we found a swastika here or there. Well, that's not true, because the Hitler or the Nazis never used this word swastika in their original German documentation. And you can, that is very easy to verify. We have that. What happened was that the English translation at one point suddenly substituted the hooked cross, which should have been the translation for Hakenkreuz, with swastik. So when we had nothing to do with any of this, we got thrown under the bus, so to speak, and connected with what the horror that was the Nazis. So there's more information at CoHNA.org/swastika. There's a lot of research, article snippets from the New York Times. You can see the history of how that change happened. You can also see a lot of eminent Jewish scholars who have written on this topic, who are supporting this and their research as well. And then the list continues. I'll stop here because there's so much to say. There's the so-called Aryan invasion migration theory, which is completely unproven till date, unsubstantiated in archaeology or the texts. We know there's no word Aryan in the Sanskrit language. I mean, if you are talking about somebody who got Sanskrit to Bharat, or assuming, then they should have a name for themselves and their homeland, but they don't. So the word is Arya or Arya for a woman, which talks about a character of a person. It has nothing to do with the physical identity, let alone race. Then there are authors that are without authority. In the Massachusetts State textbook, we will find bloggers writing about something. We will find hobby historians, people who have not read the primary sources, people who don't even know Sanskrit are commenting on whether Bhagavad Gita is this way or that, or the Rig Veda and etc. So that is a problem right there. Now the problem is now, I think you've gotten the pattern so far where a kid is going through 7th grade and 9th grade, learning all those things, and a heavily negative impression of Hindu Dharma is being created so far. It's no wonder that then they don't want nothing to do with it. What is missing in action is the truth, is this innumerable contributions of Bharatiya rishis and rishikas. The women, so they right from the Rig Veda, when there were over 20 women authors in the Rig Veda, till recent times when the Mars Mangalyaan mission, the women scientists that we saw all over the screens, or in all other spheres, from politics to arts to music to mathematics, women are there, but none of that is mentioned. There is obvious contributions like yoga and Ayurveda and Vedanta, which have influenced the American society very greatly. And American thinkers, writers, philosophers like Thoreau, Emerson. I mean, Thoreau is a few miles down the road at Walden Pond, where he stayed and read the Bhagavad Gita every single day. And the other folks also got influenced by Hindu thought, but none of that finds any mention in our textbooks. And now, to make matters worse, the attempts are being made to claim that mathematics never was from Bharat and that it came from the Middle East. When actually, if you see the primary sources, those very authors will attribute that they got this knowledge from the Hindu mathematicians. And their books, in fact, have in their titles, they'll have words like Al-Hind, which point to what the source of their knowledge is. So why should we care about all of this? Let's try to connect the dots. And this actually is a pattern that it's not like we are imagining, we are actually seeing this. One of the co-founders of CoHNA, Shobha Swami, has an interview on YouTube, and you can look it up, where she talks about her children going through Chinmaya Mission Balvihar, going to Bharat on several trips, having a very dharmic environment at home, and yet they are disconnected now, and because of this thing where it starts in school with this education, then it goes on to college courses in so-called Hinduism, where actually the course, and we found one in Washington State University like that, where the course actually, if you look at the thing, it's talking about the political environment and the current ruling party and all of that. What does the Hindu faith have to do with current political dispensation? Then there are campus events that promote anti-Hindu narratives like Smash Brahminical Patriarchy or Dismantle Hindutva, which there was a 3-day conference on that not too long ago, and then Holi against Hindutva, that kind of thing. Media is doing its work of constantly reinforcing the anti-India, anti-Hindu sentiment, and then there is no wonder then you have Hindus who are disconnected from their culture, from their faith and history, and they have an identity crisis. There's a void. They don't know, they don't want to be connected with the so-called regressive culture. So then you will hear things like, oh, I'm an atheist, and people are detached, and in some cases we are even seeing radicalization happening. So it is very sad to see this loss of culture and loss of pride when there's so much to be proud of. So all we are saying is, let's ensure that the Hindu Dharma and Indian civilization are taught with a fairness, with accuracy, with truth, and fostering a safe space for Hindu American children and preventing future generations of Americans from inheriting phobia. So not just Hindu children, but this affects non-Hindu kids as well, because they are learning, they are sowing the seeds of hate against a faith. And a bias is created against the Hindu and the Hindu faiths. So there is actually academic work that's 2 authors from California have done on this about colonial discourses and the psychological effects on Hindu children. And they talk in very much in detail. So if you are interested, I can send that as well your way, in how this affects not just Hindu kids, but non-Hindu children, other children as well. So thank you so much for patiently listening, and as I said, please reach out to me if you need any information on any of what I said. I'm going to now hand it over to you, Gishi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Darshan Thakkar. I've known him since past 20 plus years, and he has a unique combination of education. He has a PhD in education and a JD, a lawyer, in essentially did his JD as well. So he knows the legal perspectives and he knows the educational perspectives. He's had his journey. He's been a teacher in schools, public schools. He has been principal, rose through the ranks, became superintendent, and now he's at the in Lawrence. He's also a superintendent at Lawrence Family Development Charter School. He's been through the journey in Haverhill, in Framingham, and many other public school places. And he has been very actively involved with the Hindu community for all his life, originally hailing from Gujarat. And he's also on the board of Om School, for many of you who may or may not know. That's sort of the Montessori school system that has been started in Texas. And he's also advised many of people like us and elsewhere on how to tackle the biases that we just saw Rajeshwariji present on about the Hindu culture and religion presented in schools. But now, without much delay, I'll ask him to share a few words with us, and then that opens up with question and answer.
Dhanyawad Yogesh ji, and welcome everyone. It's nice to see you all. It's so refreshing to see that so many organizations, so many people come together, because education is as basic a human right as it can get. And to pursue advocacy for education for all, and not just education for the sake of learning, but also for personal development, fulfillment of life. And so I really applaud everyone here for being involved in this advocacy. What I'll do is I'll talk about the school systems. First, I'll talk from outside coming into inside, so big picture to small picture, and then going back from small picture to big picture to come full circle to lay out the whole framework. I have one activity that we can do together, and then I'll also take questions. So in America, the US Constitution doesn't mention the word education at all. In the entire Constitution, there you won't find the word education. So how does the federal government then control so much of it? Right. So what the 10th Amendment of the US Constitution says that anything that's not given to the federal government within this Constitution expressly is all the domain of the states. And so since education is not mentioned in the federal Constitution, it becomes part of the obligation that the state has for its constituents. And that sounds good, but then the problem is within a state there are so many communities and they all don't have equal population, so they don't have equal representation. There are some affluent communities, there are some populations, there are some communities that have people, most of them living below the poverty line. So then how does the state then make sure that everybody is getting what they need? And that's when it comes down to the local government. So what happens in Lexington is different from what happens in Burlington, elsewhere, because the concept is that you give the education to students and to communities in the community that they live, so they get what they need. The way federal government gets involved is mostly by giving money, because not all communities have the same resources, but they all have the same obligation to provide the same level of education to everyone. So if communities don't have the resources, there's only so much tax they can raise. So what happens? So that's why the US Department of Education exists, and they provide money to states to distribute to local governments so that they can carry on this work of giving education equitably. I don't want to say equally, but equitably. Equitably is when people get what they need, not just everybody gets the same thing. So that's how from federal to state to local. And that's why the local schools have a school committee that oversees the superintendent, and superintendent oversees all the other functions in the school district. There are students who have disabilities, and there are students who are not speakers of English as a first language, so what happens to them? So federal government has set aside billions of dollars to give to states and local communities for those purposes. So that's another function the federal government serves. By federal government, I mean U.S. Department of Education. So all of those are big picture things. So then the federal government says to every state, here, this is the money, this is the obligation we're giving you. Now you figure out a system to make this happen. So in Massachusetts, that's called the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And we just, in the education business, refer to it as DESE. So DESE makes all the rules, how money is spent, what the school systems are supposed to teach. If they need help, they provide resources. So DESE controls all the curriculum. And they have produced and published what's called curriculum frameworks. So this is a phrase that you need to know, curriculum frameworks. Those of us who grew up in India, we know what's called the syllabus, as they call it there. It's more or less like that. So they lay out the curriculum frameworks for every grade, every subject, and it's a very comprehensive document. So you can we'll do that Google search in a little bit. But curriculum frameworks for social studies, for example, and humanities, it outlines. Give you an example. For example, in 6th grade, they teach world geography as one of the topics. And I've seen this in schools where they talk about the map of India, and sometimes it's a map that's not relevant or very old or controversial, yet they just teach it. And there are many other geographical features of Bharat that are described in there that have inaccuracies. So if you look at the curriculum frameworks for 6th grade, social studies, humanities, and just do Control F and put in Hindu or Hinduism, anything like that, you'll get a hit list of all these topics, and it'll have key phrases in there that what DESE, meaning the state, is telling the local system, so what Massachusetts is telling Lexington to teach as part of 6th grade geography. Same thing, 7th grade, they teach world religions. So you pick up the curriculum framework for humanities or social studies and search for 7th grade. You'll come across topics of world religions, and again, Control F, find Hindu, and there'll be like 15 topics. And once you click through each one, you'll see the exact prompts they give. That here's what, for world religion, what is Hinduism? This is what they are supposed to teach. So these are curriculum frameworks for all subjects. You can look for math, ELA, everything, but particularly relevant to us for this discussion is the humanities. And I keep saying social studies and humanities or history because by different grade levels they have different terminology, but once you search enough, you'll know for which grade which word applies. The relevant is that I think this social studies curriculum frameworks is about 100 pages or so. And so if you do keyword searches for Ganesha or whatever keyword, that's the best way to become familiar with this document, because you don't want to read 100 pages top to bottom and by the time you get to 34th page, you don't know what was on the 12th page. So keyword searching through curriculum frameworks is the best way to know what the state is telling Lexington to teach and all other towns. Now what Lexington does is that they have a curriculum department, just like all school districts have a curriculum department with a head of curriculum. And so they look at these standards, framework standards, and then say, okay, this is what we're supposed to teach. What are the resources we're going to choose? And then they list it out. Here are the resources we will use. Some are textbooks, some are online resources, websites. Some are just random things, like you mentioned, blogs. And the reason that can happen is that according to most school districts, unions, their collective bargaining agreement gives teachers autonomy. So teachers have the autonomy to choose what resources they are going to teach. So the state says teach this. Lexington says okay, well, how are we going to teach this? And then the teachers say, we're going to use this resource to teach this topic that's mentioned in this curriculum framework. And that happens for the entire curriculum frameworks for everything. And over the years, they create these resources, they create lesson plans based on these resources, and then they just keep teaching. Now, when people don't raise a question, they don't know. Teachers mean well. Right? Teachers mean well. Schools mean well. And they want to hear from families because they want to make sure that in their profession, they are doing the right thing. Because most teachers, 99% of them care about what they're teaching, and they want to be truthful, factful, and give the families what they need. So they are very receptive. Now, what happens a lot of times is that how we approach them makes a difference. And for us, Hindus or Indians in general, we're not very aggressive in that sense. We tell our kids to just, keep quiet and listen to the teacher. It probably happens less now than it used to. Nevertheless, it's still prevalent. And that's not always the best practice, so especially like the things that were picked up here from the curriculum. And if the parents aren't looking, then they'll dismiss everything and then tell the students, keep quiet, keep your head down, do your homework, get A's, become valedictorian, and go to Harvard. Right? Good institution. But that's how we are trained. Our brains are trained and wired. So that's one of the things that we can change, that look at things. So if you have a child in 6th grade, look at the social studies curriculum frameworks and search for the topic. Do this, become very familiar with this because it's very clearly written what they're supposed to teach. And you can easily match up with, this is what they're saying to teach and this is what they're doing. It's easy to identify gaps. It takes a little practice, but it's easily done. Also, the state regulates the licensing of teachers. So all teachers have to be licensed to teach, and the license levels are different. There's a license level called provisional. Well, before that, in COVID times, emergency license came up. So emergency license basically was given to anyone with a heartbeat. You just go online, pay $25, get your emergency license. That happened during COVID because there was mass resignations. Teachers resigned because they were afraid to come back to school, and there were bodies needed to put in front of kids. So they gave emergency license, but it was temporary, and they said during this time you have to get this professional development, take these courses, such and such. But if you're not in that profession, immediately jumping in, it's very hard. And it was meant to fill a temporary gap. So that now is expiring. Most of those emergency licenses have expired, depending on when people applied for. And now, coming up in August, September, I think November is the last date, around that time when all emergency license will expire. So you need to make sure your teachers are licensed. If they have emergency, then you need to question that. Why is an emergency licensed teacher still teaching? Because they don't have the training. Then there's a license called provisional license. Provisional license is if you have a bachelor's degree in something, any subject matter, you can take a few tests. These are hard tests, and you need to do a lot of prep and courses and all that. But if you can pass the test, you get a 5-year teaching license. And in that 5 years, you have to do, I don't want to say internship, but mentorship. Someone with a higher license has to mentor you for that period. And in 5 years, you have to take additional courses and do 500 hours of training. And then you move up to a license level called initial license. So initial license is what you want all your teachers to have. Or if you have provisional license teachers, you need to ask them when you go to meet them, what are you doing about your license? When are you going to be eligible to upgrade your license to initial. Because when that happens, you know they've had the 500 hours of training, they've had mentorship, they've had all these courses, so they've become more qualified to teach. And then after initial license, once they get proficient ratings as a teacher for 3 years straight, they can apply for what's called a professional license, which is the highest level of teacher license available, professional license. And how do you know which teachers have which license? Well, one is you can ask them, but also an easier way is to go online, and there's a tool called Teacher Licensure Public Lookup. You just Google that, and there's a public lookup tool that comes up. You just punch in the teacher's name, and it shows you all the licenses that the teacher has. So if you see a teacher has, say, a license to teach middle school mathematics, and that teacher is teaching high school mathematics, then you have a right to question that why is this teacher who's only licensed to teach middle school teaching in high school? And this is nothing, there's nothing wrong with doing it. These are the things that the state has laid out for schools to do, and so it's your right as a parent to look into this. And if you approach it in a way of just fact-finding and kindly, instead of accusatory, that, hey, why are you teaching here? You're not qualified. So if you do it kindly and factfully, they'll answer you. Because most teachers, if they don't have initial or professional license, they're working towards it. So they're enrolled in courses. That's all you want to know. Are you doing something about this? And yes, great. And they're getting mentored, so you know that they're being observed and taught. So this is all coming from top to bottom. I'll just take 5 minutes and talk about how to go from bottom to up. So you look up what your handouts that the child comes home with, and like the example shown here, you can see where things are incongruent with what our beliefs are. Textbooks, they were shown, handouts, homework, all of that. If something doesn't sit well with you, you can arrange a meeting with your teacher. Most teachers are happy to sit with you, and oftentimes we say, oh, I don't need to go to school because my kids are doing well, they're getting good grades, all I'm getting is positive remarks from all teachers, I don't need to go. But in that you'll miss things. So just go anyway to parent-teacher conferences, and you're not talking about your child's grades, unless you have to, but you're talking about what they're teaching. They will even show you. They're very proud to show you things. And then you can just softly suggest if something is wrong, that can I come back to you and talk about this with you because this doesn't seem right. And most teachers are willing to work with you. You develop a relationship with teacher, develop a relationship with the principal. Also in every school there's a council called Site Council, S-I-T-E, Site Council. And you can get on that board. So Site Council is the principal handles that with equal number of teachers and parents. So you can get on, I think this is the time, around March, April is when they appoint the committee for next year. So you can inquire at your particular, and this is for each school. So it's not for one district, it's for every single school. So get on, try to get on, at least some representative should get on to some site council. And that way you start making inroads. So if there are 4 parents, they'll appoint 4 teachers and the principal. And that's how that, and it meets monthly, and they talk about what is it that students need, what is it that they're not getting, how can we improve things, everything, curriculum, cafeteria, anything that's on people's mind. That's discussed at the site council meeting. And you can get on that. You can also get on, a lot of us are more programmed to go on PTOs, parent-teacher organizations, but site council, a lot of people don't know. So that's definitely, PTO is fine, but it doesn't make that much impact. Your more impactful membership is in site council. Also, every school has a PD calendar, professional development calendar. So you look at that, when is the date for teachers' professional development, and you contact professional development coordinator, who's usually listed on the website, and offer to help with professional development, and they're very happy to take professional development. You can also attend school committee meetings, as I understand some have. And what else the school committee does is that they also evaluate the superintendent. And in superintendent evaluation, they take feedback from the community. So in addition to site council, so some people can get on site council, others can get on the superintendent evaluation committee. So when the superintendent is being evaluated, you get to give feedback about how the superintendent has run the school district. And that feedback is taken very, very seriously, because it goes into the evaluation of the superintendent, and that goes into renewing the contract, that goes into salary, benefit, all of that. So it's very important to make sure you have a voice in superintendent evaluation, and you can do that through that committee. If you present at school committees, usually it's a short time, you get 5 minutes, but then if you keep going every month, you can get more accomplished, because they know that you're going to keep coming until something is, and you don't want to get loud and belligerent. You're just there to present facts and accountability. And before you leave from there, you just say, okay, next month I will come and talk about this. So they already know what you're going to say. Next month you show up and say, last month I worked with this principal or that teacher, and it was great. They made this much progress. They gave us this. However, there's still, so they gave us A, B, and C, but D and E is still, and D is a little hard, we understand. We're willing to work with you. Let's get D accomplished for next month. You do that, and then the following month you get E accomplished, and that's how you keep moving through the year. Ultimately, when everything fails, you've tried everything, and nothing is going in your favor, and these things continue, there are two other alternatives, which are essentially filing a complaint against the school. The organizations who receive these complaints are called Problem Resolution System, PRS, and that's at DESE. So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has a division called the Problem Resolution Center, and that's where you can file. It's very easy, you just go online and file, and then they take the complaint, send it to the school, and ask the school to respond. They give them 30 days, and then the parent gets a chance to respond to that. And then after that, they ask them, come to a resolution amongst yourselves. If you can't, then we'll do a mediation. And then 90% of these things are resolved before mediation, more than 90%. I've never had to go to a mediation. Anytime there's been, over the years, 2 or 3 complaints filed, and they've all resolved, because it was just a result of people not talking clearly. And when clear communication happens, everything's resolved. So that's how that happens at PRS. And if you feel like there was discrimination, then it's Office of Civil Rights. Each state has an Office of Civil Rights. You can file a complaint there. But these things are not very useful, PRS or OCR, because they become so adversarial, and ultimately people get sour, and there's so many fights, it just defeats the purpose. So it's a good idea to go slowly through site council, through school committee, and communication with teachers. That's the general outline of how things work in schools. I'll take questions.